I'm Amanda, 32, a school counselor from Boston, 3 years into my marriage with Michael, a software engineer from a traditional family. I was thrilled about our first vacation with his parents at a Florida beach resort. I'd always dreamed of belonging to a real family, and for a while, I thought I finally had that, until that dinner. The dinner where I learned exactly where I stood in the perfect family image they maintained for decades. Before I tell you how, my in-laws shattered my heart at that resort restaurant. Let me know where you're watching from. Hit that like button if you've ever felt like an outsider in your own family. Trust me, what happened next will make your jaw drop. Growing up in the foster care system shaped my deepest desires. I bounced between 7 different homes before turning 18. Always the outsider looking in. Always temporary. What I wanted most wasn't fancy possessions or even stability. It was family. A real family where I belonged, where my chair at the table was permanent, where my absence would be noticed. Those years taught me to adapt quickly, to read people, and to cherish genuine connection when I found it. I met Michael at a charity fundraiser for foster youth education 5 years ago. I was volunteering, sharing my story to help raise money for college scholarships. He approached me afterward, genuinely moved by my speech. With his kind brown eyes and gentle voice, Michael was different from anyone I'd dated before. Educated, from a good family as he called it, he worked as a software engineer for a prestigious tech company. Our connection was immediate and deep. At least that's what I believed. Our romance progressed rapidly. 6 months of dating, 3 months of living together, and suddenly we were planning a wedding. Looking back, I realize how little I knew about his family before I became part of it. They attended our wedding, of course, a modest ceremony that Michael insisted was perfect as is, when his mother suggested upgrades. Robert and Patricia Williams arrived in matching Navy outfits, perfectly coordinated, perfectly polite, and perfectly distant. They gave appropriate hugs, made appropriate small talk, and gave an appropriate wedding gift, a check with many zeros that made me uncomfortable, but that Michael quickly deposited. After the wedding, our interactions with them were limited to major holidays. Each visit was brief, structured, and left me feeling slightly off balance. Patricia would comment on my cooking with phrases like, "How innovative to prepare it that way," while Robert discussed family matters with Michael in his study. Michael's sister Rebecca and her husband James were warmer, but still maintained a certain distance, dropping references to family vacations and traditions I knew nothing about. When Michael announced his parents had invited us to join their annual family vacation at the Sapphire Shores Resort in Florida, I was genuinely excited. "This is a big deal," he explained. "They've never invited anyone who wasn't family before." I didn't point out the obvious, that I was family, at least on paper. Instead, I focused on the opportunity. 2 weeks to bond with the Williams family, 2 weeks to finally break through the polite barrier and form real connections. 2 weeks to become a true daughter-in-law rather than an appendage to their son. We arrived at Sapphire Shores on a sweltering Sunday afternoon. The resort was everything the brochure promised: pristine beaches, luxury suites, and attentive staff who greeted the Williams party with practiced deference. Robert had booked 5 oceanfront suites, 1 for each couple and an extra, for family gatherings. I noticed Patricia inspecting our luggage as the bellhop collected it, her eyes lingering on my worn suitcase before flicking away. That first evening, we gathered in Robert and Patricia's suite for drinks before dinner. Rebecca immediately pulled Michael into conversation about people I didn't know from their childhood neighborhood. James and Robert discussed stock portfolios and business acquisitions. Patricia fluttered between conversations, occasionally touching my arm to ask if I needed anything, never staying long enough for actual dialogue. "Remember when Uncle Thomas took us fishing and you fell off the pier?" Rebecca laughed, nudging Michael. "And Dad jumped in with his clothes on to get you," Michael added, everyone erupting in laughter at the shared memory. I smiled along, trying to look engaged rather than excluded. When I attempted to share a story from my own childhood about a foster father who taught me to fish, Patricia smoothly interrupted with, "Shall we head down to dinner? Our reservation is in 15 minutes." Throughout that first evening, I tried. I asked questions about family photos mentioned in conversation. I complimented Patricia's elegant dress. I discussed recent educational reforms with Robert, drawing on my experience as a school counselor. Each attempt was met with polite but minimal engagement before the conversation drifted back to family history or inside references. Still, I remained hopeful. It was just the first night after all. We had 13 more days to connect. As we returned to our suite that night, I mentioned the difficulty to Michael. "They seem nice, but I feel like I'm struggling to really talk to them." Michael kissed my forehead dismissively. "They're just tired from travel. Mom's always tense the first day of vacation. It'll get better." I believed him because I wanted to believe him. Because I wanted, more than anything, to finally have that family I'd dreamed of since I was a little girl eating dinner alone while foster siblings shared jokes I wasn't part of. I fell asleep planning tomorrow's outfit and conversation topics, determined to find my place at the Williams family table. The next morning dawned bright and beautiful. I woke early, eager to make the most of our first full day. Michael was still asleep, so I slipped into my swimsuit, grabbed my book, and headed to the beach. To my surprise, Patricia was already there, perfectly poised on a lounge chair despite the early hour. "Good morning," I called cheerfully, setting up my towel on the adjacent chair. "You're an early riser too?" "Williams women always rise with the sun," she replied, her eyes hidden behind designer sunglasses. "It's when we get our best thinking." "Done." The comment stung subtly, a reminder that I wasn't a Williams woman by blood. Still, I persisted. "It's beautiful here. Have you been coming to this resort long?" 23 years, she answered. "Since Rebecca was 5. It's our special place." We chatted for a while about the resort's amenities. When I mentioned looking forward to trying the famous oceanfront restaurant, Patricia's posture stiffened slightly. "Oh, we have a particular tradition about that restaurant," she said vaguely, then changed the subject. As the others joined us on the beach, I noticed how naturally they arranged themselves. Robert beside Patricia, Rebecca and James nearby, Michael automatically completing their circle. I sat on the edge, physically present, but somehow apart. When I shifted my chair to be more included, Patricia commented, "Amanda, dear, you're blocking my sun," necessitating another move. At lunch in the beachside cafe, I approached the table where everyone was already seated. The only empty chair was at the far end, separated from Michael by his sister and brother-in-law. As I moved toward it, Rebecca suddenly exclaimed, "Oh, wait, that's where Dad always sits. He likes the view of the marina." "I'll sit somewhere else," I offered, but then felt awkward as they rearranged themselves, creating a space that somehow left me facing away from half the conversation. Throughout the meal, questions directed at me were basic and perfunctory, while family members engaged in deeper discussions among themselves. "So, Amanda," Robert finally addressed me directly, "Michael tells us your school is implementing new counseling protocols?" Grateful for the opening, I began explaining the innovative trauma-informed approach we were adopting. "It's actually making a huge difference for students from challenging backgrounds." "Fascinating," Robert interrupted, turning to Michael. "Speaking of innovations, how's that new project going at work? The one with the government contract? Potential?" The afternoon shopping excursion in the nearby town continued the pattern. When I tried on a blue sundress and asked for opinions, Patricia merely glanced up from the scarf display and said, "It's fine, dear," before turning to Rebecca with detailed commentary on which colors complemented her complexion. When I found a beautiful seashell necklace and showed it to Michael, his mother interceded. "Michael, darling, didn't you mention wanting to get Amanda something from that jewelry store we saw? The one with the more established pieces?" That evening, I tried talking to Michael again, this time more directly. I feel like your family is keeping me at arm's length, especially your mother. Michael sighed, clearly annoyed. You're overthinking everything. Mom's just particular about how things are done. Dad's the same way. They need time to adjust to new people. I'm not new, Michael. We've been married 3 years. You know what I mean. New to the vacation routine. They've been doing things the same way for decades. Could you maybe help include me more? Like when conversations drift to people I don't know? He rolled his eyes. If I have to explain every reference, we'll never have a natural conversation. Just relax and stop analyzing everything. This is supposed to be a vacation. His dismissal hurt, but I decided to try another approach. The next morning, I noticed Patricia heading to the resort spa and hurried to catch up with her. I was just going to book a treatment, I said brightly. Maybe we could go together. I'd love your recommendation on which massage is best. Patricia hesitated before responding. Well, I always book with Marguerite. She's been handling my treatments for years. I don't know if she could accommodate both of us on short notice. That's okay. I can try someone else, I offered. We could still chat in the relaxation room after? I actually have a call with my charity board afterward. She paused, studying me. You know, Amanda, it's admirable how you've built a career. Despite your challenging start, not everyone from your background manages to achieve professional stability. The backhanded compliment left me speechless. Was I supposed to thank her for acknowledging I'd overcome being an orphan? Before I could respond, she'd swept into the spa, leaving me standing alone in the corridor. The interaction left me torn between standing up for myself and desperately wanting their acceptance. I was beginning to realize this vacation might not deliver the family bonding I'd hoped for. Still, I wasn't ready to give up just yet. On the 4th day of our vacation, Robert announced a family excursion to the historic lighthouse and marine museum. It's tradition, he declared at breakfast. We've taken a family photo there every year since the children were small. Tau. Lighthouse was picturesque, perched on rocky cliffs with waves crashing dramatically below. As we toured the exhibits, I noticed Patricia and Rebecca frequently huddled together, their conversation stopping whenever I approached. Michael drifted between his father and sister, leaving me to examine displays alone. When we reached the observation deck, Robert flagged down another tourist. Would you mind taking our family photo? It's a tradition. We arranged ourselves against the railing with the magnificent ocean view behind us. Robert and Patricia centered themselves, with Rebecca and James to their right. Michael moved to his parents' left, leaving me on the far edge. Amanda, could you step back a bit? Patricia suggested. The sun is casting shadows. I complied, only to hear Robert add, Actually, why don't you take one of just the 4 of us first? For continuity with our previous albums. As I stepped away, I heard Robert murmur to Michael, Family bloodlines matter, son. Some traditions shouldn't be diluted. The comment wasn't meant for my ears, but it struck like a physical blow. While they posed for several configurations, parents with children, siblings together, couples, I was included in only one final group shot, standing so far at the edge that a later glance at the photo would show me almost as an afterthought. Later that afternoon, Rebecca approached me at the pool. This was unusual. She typically stayed close to her mother or husband. I was initially pleased, thinking perhaps one family member was making an effort. You and Michael seem happy, she began, settling into the lounge chair beside mine. How long have you been trying for children? The question caught me off guard. We're focusing on our careers right now. Rebecca nodded sympathetically. Probably wise. Parenthood is such a commitment. Of course, Mom and Dad are eager for more. Grandchildren. The Williams genes are quite strong. All the cousins look alike. Our family pediatrician always comments on it. We'll decide about children on our own timeline, I replied carefully. Oh, of course, Rebecca backpedaled smoothly. It's just that fertility concerns increase with age. And adoption can be so complicated, though I suppose you'd know all about that system. I excused myself to use the restroom, then locked myself in a stall and called my best friend Lauren. "They're driving me crazy," I whispered. "Every conversation feels like an interrogation or a reminder that I don't belong." "Can Michael really not see what's happening?" Lauren asked. "He thinks I'm being too sensitive, says I don't understand how they are." "That's bullshit, Amanda. He's letting them treat you like an outsider." That evening, the resort hosted a beach bonfire with music and cocktails. As we gathered around the flames, Robert launched into family stories. "Remember when Michael won that sailing competition? 14 years old and already showing the Williams. Competitive spirit." "And Rebecca's high school graduation speech," Patricia added. "The principal said no Williams had ever delivered a more eloquent address." Story after story emphasized family traits, family achievements, family connections. I sat silently, increasingly aware that in this narrative, I had no role. When I attempted to join the conversation with a story about Michael's recent work presentation, Patricia smoothly redirected. "Speaking of presentations, Rebecca, tell everyone about James's promotion." As the evening progressed, I noticed Michael watching me with growing awareness. Perhaps he was finally seeing the dynamic. When I caught his eye, he gave me a small, apologetic smile. It was the first acknowledgement that something might be wrong. The next morning, I woke to find Michael already gone. A note on his pillow read, "Gone fishing with Dad, back for lunch." I headed to breakfast alone, only to discover none of the family was there. When I returned to our suite to get my book, I heard voices from the family gathering room next door. I stood frozen, hearing multiple voices, Robert's authoritative tone, Patricia's refined accent, Rebecca's agreement, and Michael's lower responses. They were having a family meeting without me. 20 minutes later, Michael returned. To our room, startled to find me there. "What was that about?" I asked directly. "What was what about?" "The family meeting I wasn't invited to." He had the grace to look embarrassed. "It wasn't a meeting. Dad just wanted to discuss some family investments, boring financial stuff." "I'm your wife. Family finances affect me too. Not these. They're old family trusts, established generations ago. Nothing to do with our personal finances." The casual way he separated family money from our money spoke volumes. I was beginning to understand there was family, the Williams bloodline, and then there was me, separate, outside, tolerated but not incorporated. The resort's premium restaurant, Azure, required reservations weeks in advance. Patricia had mentioned several times that their dinner there was the highlight of every vacation. A Williams family tradition for the final night, she'd emphasized. On our last evening, I spent extra time getting ready. Perhaps it was foolish, but I still harbored hope that I could somehow break through the invisible barrier. I chose my most elegant dress, a deep emerald that Michael had once said brought out the gold flecks in my eyes. I styled my hair in an updo, applied makeup with care, and even wore the pearl earrings Michael's parents had given me for Christmas, their only personal gift in 3 years. Michael whistled appreciatively when I emerged from the bathroom. "You look beautiful." For a moment, I felt a flicker of confidence. This night would be different. I would finally find my place. We met the others in the lobby, everyone dressed formally. Patricia wore a designer dress I recognized from a magazine, while Rebecca's outfit complemented her mother's in a lighter shade. The men wore tailored suits, Robert's pocket square precisely matching Patricia's dress. "The Williams family," Robert announced proudly to the receptionist. "We have a reservation for Azure at 8. The maitre d' appeared, all polished. Professionalism. "Of course, Mr. Williams. We've been expecting you. Your usual table is ready." As we followed him through the elegant restaurant, Robert stepped closer and murmured something I couldn't hear. The maitre d' nodded, glanced at me, then spoke quietly to another staff member. We approached a beautifully set round table with an ocean view, laid for 5 people. I assumed there had been a misunderstanding. "Excuse me," I said quietly to the maitre d'. "We need a setting for 6. Before he could respond, Robert cleared his throat. "Actually, Amanda, we have a different arrangement tonight." The second staff member stepped forward. "If you'll follow me, ma'am." Confused, I looked at Michael, whose eyes were now fixed on his shoes. "What's happening?" I asked, a cold feeling spreading through my chest. Patricia adjusted her bracelet. "This is a special family tradition dinner," she explained, her voice artificially light. "We always have our last meal here just as immediate." "Family?" "I am immediate family," I said, my voice catching. "I'm Michael's wife." "It's nothing personal, dear," Patricia continued. "It's just for blood relatives. It's how we've always done it." I turned to Michael, waiting for him to speak up, to say something, anything, in my defense. He looked at me, then at his father, then back at the floor. "It's just tradition, Amanda," he mumbled. "Just one dinner." The restaurant suddenly seemed too bright, too quiet. I felt dozens of eyes on us, other diners witnessing my humiliation. The staff member stood patiently, waiting to escort me to my separate table, visible across the restaurant, a small 2-person setting where I would sit alone. "This way, ma'am," he repeated gently. I walked on numb legs, aware of whispers, from nearby tables. The waiter pulled out my chair at the isolated table, handed me a menu, and asked if I'd like a drink. "White wine," I managed to say. "Whatever you recommend." From my position, I could see them perfectly, the complete family picture. They settled into animated conversation immediately, as if relieved by my absence. Robert ordered champagne. Patricia laughed at something Rebecca said. Michael relaxed visibly, his shoulders dropping as he rejoined his bloodline without his outsider wife disrupting the symmetry. My wine arrived, presented by a different waiter with kind eyes. "Would you like to hear the specials?" he asked. I shook my head, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. "Is someone joining you?" he asked gently. "No," I whispered. "I'm alone." Something in his expression, pity perhaps, broke the dam. A tear slipped down my cheek, then another. I tried to hide behind my menu, but my hands were shaking too badly to hold it. The waiter quietly placed a napkin beside my hand. "I'll give you a few minutes," he said softly, creating a shield with his body to block other diners' view of my distress. I watched through blurred vision as the Williams family ordered, toasted, and began their appetizers. Not once did Michael look in my direction. Not once did any of them acknowledge the empty chair they'd created in their perfect family circle. I couldn't do it. Couldn't sit there alone while everyone watched. Couldn't pretend this was normal or acceptable. I placed my napkin on the table, left cash for the untouched wine, and walked out as steadily as my trembling legs would allow. The night air hit me like a blessing as I exited the restaurant. I gulped it down, trying to calm the storm inside. Me. Then I began walking, past the pool, past the beach access, all the way back to our suite. With each step, humiliation transformed into something harder, colder. Inside our room, I finally let myself break. I sank to the floor in my beautiful dress and cried, deep, wrenching sobs for the family I'd never had, for the acceptance I'd never found, for the husband who'd let me sit alone rather than challenge his parents. I cried until my elegant updo collapsed, and my carefully applied makeup ran in dark streaks down my face. Michael returned 3 hours later. I was sitting on the balcony, staring at the ocean, all cried out. "You're overreacting," he said immediately, defensively. It was just one dinner. One dinner where you let your family treat me like I don't exist. It's tradition. They've always had that final dinner, just parents and children. I'm your family now, Michael. Or at least I thought I was. He loosened his tie, frustration evident. You're making this into something it's not. Why do you have to be so sensitive about everything? I stood up, something snapping inside me. Sensitive? Is that what you call it when your wife is publicly humiliated? When your father whispers about bloodlines like we're breeding horses? When your mother makes backhanded comments about my background? When your sister interrogates me about not having children yet? Michael's eyes widened. What are you talking about? Don't pretend you haven't noticed. The separate table tonight was just the final insult in 2 weeks of constant exclusion. The family photos where I'm pushed to the edge. The conversations that stop when I approach. The family meeting I wasn't invited to. That's not fair. No, what's not fair is watching my husband sit with his family while I'm alone across the restaurant with everyone staring at me like I'm some charity case. Michael ran his hands through his hair. You don't understand how my family works. Oh, I understand perfectly now. I understand that after 3 years of marriage, I'm still not family to them. And worse, I'm not family enough to you for you, to stand up for me. His silence confirmed everything. They never approved of our marriage, did they? I asked quietly. Michael sat heavily on the bed. They thought I was marrying too quickly. They had concerns. About my background. About the foster kid with no family connections or inheritance. He didn't deny it. They're traditional. They had expectations about who I would marry. And you knew this all along. Every holiday visit, every interaction. You knew they didn't. Accept me? I thought they'd come around eventually. That's why I wanted this vacation. I thought if they spent more time with you, they'd overlook my inadequate bloodline. My voice dripped with bitterness. Michael looked away. There are complications you don't understand. Family obligations. What obligations? His hesitation told me there was more. Michael, tell me. There are financial considerations. Family trusts with certain conditions. What conditions? He swallowed hard. My grandfather established trusts for all the grandchildren. Mine has a significant value, but there are lifestyle clauses. Lifestyle clauses? I repeated, disbelieving. Dad controls distributions until I'm 40. He has discretion based on whether I'm maintaining certain family standards. The truth hit me like a physical blow. Your inheritance. That's what this is about? You let them treat me like garbage because you're afraid of losing money? It's not just money. It's my birthright, my family legacy. You don't understand because you don't have... He stopped abruptly, but it was too late. Because I don't have family, I finished for him. You're right. I don't have parents who'd pay me to reject someone I love. I don't have a family legacy of treating people like they're beneath me. Michael reached for my hand. Amanda, please. We can work this out. I love you. I pulled away. No, Michael. You have to choose. Me or your family's approval. You can't have both anymore. He stared at me, conflict clear in his eyes. But he didn't answer. Didn't immediately choose me. And that was answer enough. I'm booking a flight home tomorrow, I said quietly. Don't do this. Don't make a scene. We can work through this quietly. Quietly? Like how I quietly sat alone while everyone stared? Like how I quietly accepted every slight and insult for 2 weeks? I'm done being quiet. I began pulling clothes from drawers, stuffing them haphazardly into my suitcase. Tears blurred my vision again, but these were different, hot with anger rather than shame. Think about what you're doing, Michael pleaded. At least wait until we get home to discuss this. So your parents won't know there's trouble in paradise? So you can maintain appearances? Amanda, be reasonable. I've been reasonable for 3 years. I've been patient and understanding and accommodating. And it got me a table for one while my husband champagne toasted with the real family. As I packed, the magnitude of my situation crashed over me. I wasn't just leaving a vacation. I was likely leaving my marriage. walking away from the only family I'd thought was mine. But some humiliations couldn't be forgiven, and some betrayals cut too deep for repair. Michael made increasingly desperate attempts to convince me to stay, not because he understood my hurt, but because my leaving would create an awkward situation. His priorities were crystal clear, and I wasn't among them. I slept fitfully on the couch, refusing to share the bed with Michael. When morning came, I had a moment of clarity. I didn't want to slink away in shame. I needed, to speak my truth before leaving. "I want a family meeting," I told Michael as he emerged from the bathroom. "This morning, before I go." "Amanda, that's not necessary." "It's necessary to me. Either arrange it or I'll knock on their doors myself." Seeing my determination, Michael made the calls. By 9 a.m., the entire Williams family had gathered uncomfortably in the resort's private conference room. Patricia looked annoyed, Robert impatient, Rebecca nervous, and James deliberately blank. Michael sat apart from everyone, a man caught between worlds. I stood at the head of the table, still in yesterday's clothes, hair pulled back severely from a face stripped of pretense. "Thank you for coming," I began, my counselor training steadying my voice. "I'll be leaving today, but before I go, there are things that need to be said." "If this is about last night's dinner arrangement," Patricia started, "this is about 2 weeks of deliberate exclusion culminating in public humiliation," I interrupted. "This is about respect, family, and basic human decency." I looked each of them in the eye, drawing strength from their discomfort. "Patricia, from the moment we arrived, you've made it clear I don't meet your standards. Your comments about my challenging background and your constant reminders of family traditions I'm not part of weren't subtle. You've engineered every seating arrangement, every conversation, to emphasize my outsider status." I turned to Robert. "You speak of family bloodlines as if we're discussing racehorses rather than human beings. You've manipulated your son with financial threats to maintain control over his life choices. You whisper to maitre d's to separate me from my husband because I don't share your DNA. To Rebecca, you pretend friendship while interrogating me about fertility and adoption, knowing my history makes those questions particularly painful. Your loyalty has never been to me as your brother's wife, but to maintaining the family hierarchy." Finally, I faced Michael. "And you. You knew all along they hadn't accepted me. You brought me into this situation knowing I'd be treated as less than. You watched me try desperately to connect with your family while they systematically rejected me. And when the moment came to stand up for me, to be my partner, you chose your inheritance over my dignity." Robert's face had reddened dangerously. "Now see here. Our family has traditions and standards that have served us well for generations. Michael understands his responsibilities." "Responsibilities?" I laughed bitterly. "Is it your son's responsibility to let his wife be publicly humiliated? Is maintaining appearances worth destroying his marriage?" Patricia's voice was ice. "You're being dramatic. It was one dinner. Not everything is about you, Amanda. Some things are about family heritage." "I am family," I exclaimed. "Or I should have been. That's what marriage means. But you never intended to accept me, did you? I was never going to be good enough because I didn't come from the right background, the right family, with the right connections." Rebecca shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. I looked at Michael, giving him one last chance. "Is this really what you want? A life where your choices are dictated by your parents' approval? Where your wife is an accessory that can be set aside when inconvenient to the family image?" Michael glanced at his father, then back at me. His silence was deafening. I straightened my shoulders. "I deserve better than this. I deserve a family that values me for who I am, not what background I come from. I deserve a husband who stands beside me, not one who lets me sit alone while he enjoys family champagne toasts." Robert stood, towering with authority. "You're making a grave mistake. Michael's position in this family comes with certain expectations. No, the mistake was thinking blood was thicker than basic human decency. I gathered my purse, dignity intact despite my rumpled appearance. Enjoy your perfect family picture. I won't be in it anymore. I walked out with my head high, despite the tears threatening to spill. The resort arranged a taxi, and I sat silently during the ride to the airport, watching palm trees and ocean views blur past the window. This wasn't how vacations were supposed to end. At the airport, I called Lauren. "I'm coming home early," I managed before my voice broke. "What happened?" Her concern was immediate. Through tears, I explained the dinner, the confrontation, everything. "Come straight to my place," she insisted. "I'll pick you up at the airport. You're not going back to that apartment alone." On the flight home, I cried quietly in my window seat, mourning not just my marriage, but the family I'd thought I'd finally found. Yet beneath the grief, something else was forming, a bedrock certainty that I'd done the right thing. That demanding basic respect wasn't too much to ask. That family should lift you up, not tear you down. For the first time in my life, I'd walked away rather than desperately trying to belong where I wasn't wanted. It hurt. God, how it hurt. But there was power in that choice. The power of valuing myself when others wouldn't. The first weeks after returning home were the darkest. I moved into Lauren's spare room, unable to face the apartment Michael and I had shared. My body felt hollowed out, as if the crying had carved empty spaces inside me. I called in sick to work, something I'd never done before. "You need to eat something," Lauren would say, placing toast or soup beside me that went largely untouched. Michael called constantly at first. His messages evolved from defensive, "You embarrassed the entire family," to manipulative, "My parents feel terrible about the misunderstanding," to desperate, "Please come home, we can work this out." I listened but felt nothing. The connection was severed. 2 weeks after my return, I met with a divorce attorney. 3 years, no children, no significant joint assets, she summarized. Should be straightforward. Nothing about heartbreak is straightforward, but I nodded anyway. The most unexpected development came 3 weeks in. Rebecca appeared at Lauren's door, alone. "How did you find me?" I asked, shocked to see my soon-to-be ex-sister-in-law standing awkwardly in the hallway. "Michael had your friend's address in his contacts." She hesitated. "Can we talk?" Over coffee at a nearby cafe, Rebecca did something I never expected. She apologized. "What happened to you was wrong," she said simply. "I've been part of that family dynamic my whole life, so I didn't see how toxic it was until watching it through your eyes. The way they treated you. The way I treated you. I'm truly sorry." She explained how Robert and Patricia had controlled her life too, approving her college major, her husband, even her career choices. "James and I play along because it's easier, because the trust fund has strings, because confronting them means losing everything. Including yourself," I added quietly. Rebecca nodded, eyes downcast. "You were braver than I've ever been." Her visit didn't heal everything, but it confirmed I wasn't crazy, wasn't overreacting. The Williams family dynamic was as broken as I'd finally recognized. When I eventually returned to the apartment to collect my things, I discovered Michael had terminated the lease, another attempt to control my options. I found temporary housing and threw myself into work, finding purpose in helping students navigate their own family challenges. Therapy became my lifeline. "You're grieving multiple losses," my therapist explained. "The end of your marriage, the family you thought you'd found, and the reopening of earlier abandonment wounds." Slowly, session by session, I began processing not just the vacation trauma, but the deeper patterns that had led me there. My desperate need to belong, my willingness to accept scraps of affection, my fear of standing alone. One unexpected outcome. I started a support group for people dealing with toxic in-laws. Family Beyond Blood met weekly in a community center classroom. Sharing my story helped others name their experiences, and hearing theirs reminded me I wasn't alone in these struggles. The divorce proceedings turned ugly when Robert hired aggressive attorneys who deposed my former foster parents and scrutinized my financial history. They were looking for leverage, for ways to paint me as the unstable, unreasonable party. I stood firm, refusing settlement offers designed to silence me. "They're used to throwing money at problems until they go away," my attorney observed. "They don't know what to do with someone who can't be bought." Finding a new apartment strained my savings, but the space became a sanctuary. The first home that was truly mine, decorated with no one else's preferences to consider. I painted one wall deep teal because I wanted to, adopted a rescue cat, who needed love as much as I did, and slowly rebuilt my life one independent choice at a time. 6 months after the disastrous vacation, I received a promotion at work. The resilience I'd developed through personal trauma had made me a more effective counselor, more attuned to students' unspoken needs. The principal cited my exceptional empathy and boundary-setting skills, qualities forged in the fire of my own experience. Michael requested to meet one last time before the divorce was finalized. We sat in a neutral coffee shop, strangers who once shared everything. "I made a terrible mistake," he said, looking older than I remembered. "I should have stood up for you. I should have been a better husband." "Yes," I agreed simply. "You should have." "My parents were wrong. I was wrong. I see that now." He pushed his coffee cup in small circles. "I've started therapy too, trying to understand why I couldn't break free from their expectations." I felt an unexpected wave of compassion. Michael was as trapped in the Williams family dynamic as Rebecca. The difference was, he'd chosen it over me. "I hope you find your way, Michael. I really do. But it won't be with me." He nodded, accepting what we both knew. "You deserved better." "Yes," I said again, stronger this time. "I did." 1 year after sitting alone at that restaurant table, my life had transformed entirely. New apartment, new friends, same job but with new responsibilities. I'd joined a community garden and a book club, small steps toward building my chosen family. Lauren remained my rock, but I'd expanded my circle to include people who valued authenticity over appearances, kindness over status. The most profound change was internal. I no longer saw my foster care background as a deficit to overcome or hide. It was simply part of my story, one that had given me resilience, adaptability, and a deep appreciation for genuine connection. On the anniversary of that fateful dinner, I hosted a gathering at my apartment, a deliberate reclaiming of the date. Friends crowded around my mismatched dining table, passing dishes family style, laughing and talking over each other. No seating chart, no dress code, no whispered judgments. Just people who chose to be together. Looking around that table, diverse in background, age, profession, I realized I'd finally found what I'd been searching for all my life. Not the perfect family portrait with matching outfits and ancestral silver, but the messy, authentic connection of people who saw each other clearly and loved each other anyway. True family, I'd learned, isn't about bloodlines or traditions or inheritance. It's about who stays when things get hard, who makes space for you at the table, not because obligation demands it, but because your presence makes the meal better. If you've ever felt like an outsider looking in, remember that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is walk away from tables where your place setting is an afterthought. Sometimes the most powerful choice is creating your own table where everyone belongs. Have you ever had to walk away from toxic family situations to preserve your dignity? Share your experience in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more journeys of healing and self-discovery. Remember, Family isn't always defined by blood. Sometimes it's the people who make sure you never have to sit at a table alone. Thank you for listening, and may you always find your place at tables surrounded by genuine love.